Texas Monthly. There was a time when hiring an assassin would require leaving the couch. The client would have to go to the bank at least and get cash. He'd have to bring the cash to the killer and discuss logistics, names, locations, routines. These actions would have allowed time for a reflection and second-guessing. Erik Mond was driving up I-35 from South Texas and had been drinking when he ordered his third hit over the phone from the side of the road. No one would actually be killed this time. This was a ruse. On the other line, Gil Peled was in a room with the FBI, and they wanted to see if Erik would pay to kill again. Maybe Erik felt some grief after the first murders. Maybe he regretted what he'd done. But by this time, you can hear it in his voice. He knew he could just wire the money, like he's buying from Amazon. Open the banking app, hit transfer, 150, 3 zeros, send. Done.
Honestly, I think I'd rather take care of it permanently and do the 25. And then I'll just run 150 through Spear Tip, like we did last time.
Erik Mond had no idea that earlier in that day, on December 10th, 2021, law enforcement had arrested Brian Brockway, Adam Carey, and Gil Peled, or that an FBI agent was near Erik's car, tracking his movements. After falling for the trap and ordering a fake hit, Erik hung up with Gil and got back on the road, speeding north towards Austin. Five minutes later, Erik Mond was in handcuffs. I'm Katie Vine, and this is The Problem with Erik, an original podcast created by Texas Monthly and Anna Worrell. This is the final episode, Episode 6, The Fall. Erik Mond cooperated completely as he was transported to the FBI's office in Northwest Austin. He even gave the driver a shortcut to beat the downtown traffic. When they pulled up to the wide, 4-story brick building, they brought Erik inside and placed him in a white-walled interrogation room. He sat by himself at a cherrywood table, dressed in an untucked khaki hunting shirt and blue jeans, his hands in cuffs resting in his lap. Then the doors swung open. 2 FBI agents entered, Agent Shields and Agent Sam.
You mind if I spit out my gum? No, not at all. Hang on.
Agent Shields handed Erik a trash can for his chewing gum.
Thank you. Cool.
Hey, Erik. How you doing?
I'm good.
So, my name's Agent Sam. I'm with the FBI, obviously. Here's Brett. We don't like interviewing people with handcuffs on. Are you good with us taking it off?
Yes.
Okay, you're not going to be a problem or anything?
No, I promise I don't.
Heard you were you out hunting or something? Or?
Yes, sir.
Erik told them he shot some quail and pheasant on his hunting trip as Agent Sam unlocked his handcuffs. The agents read Erik his Miranda rights.
You have the right to talk to a lawyer for advice before we ask you any questions.
Then they tiptoed into the purpose of his arrest.
First of all, do you have any suspicion or any...
I have nothing.
Well, would it help you if we told you that we were from Nashville, Tennessee?
My son goes to school there.
Okay.
Since Erik was playing dumb, Agent Sam changed up his tactic.
Okay, because I think you have a story to tell. And I think it's a complicated one. I personally see things in shades of gray, not black and white, you know. I'm not the kind of guy who's like, hey, anybody who's, shoots someone and kills them is evil or anything like that. I know that things go on in your life that aren't ideal, and then sometimes you're scrambling hard to figure out how to deal with it, and then things turn out even worse, and then they turn out worse, and then next thing you know, you're backed into a corner and nothing you can do. So, having said that, this is why we're here, obviously.
Agent Sam opened a folder, took out a sheet of paper, and showed it to Erik. It was a picture of Bill and Holly.
So, we're going to get into this. This is obviously an investigation that you're aware of. It happened in Nashville, okay? I'm not going to be able to really explain what happened other than I'm going to play you some audio. Because you understand, like, when the murder happened, Holly had...
I don't even think, we haven't even explained that part to him. That this is a homicide investigation.
Oh, he knows. He knows. Don't worry about that.
Erik remained expressionless. Then Sam pulled out his cell phone and played Erik the clip from Holly's security camera the night of the murders. Erik leaned forward. Holly and Bill's screams filled the room, and he bowed his head.
This is someone I think you cared about. I know you cared about her because, you know, you tried to do the right thing at first, right, with Landway. And it got out of control.
Erik seemed confused at the mention of Bill Landway.
Landway's the guy.
There's a good chance Erik never knew him by name. Gil had always been the one taking care of things.
Let's kind of cut to the chase with this.
Yeah.
Okay? I'm sorry. Do you tell me you know who this girl is?
Agent Shields pointed to a picture of Holly.
I met her at a bar in Nashville
Okay. And how long was your relationship with her?
that night, and another night I came back from Nashville.
So you were using her services as a prostitute, correct?
Yes.
And now this guy right here, Landway, right?
Never met him.
Never met him, but he starts trying to extort you, correct?
He sent me some text messages, but he never demanded any money.
Yes, he did.
And this is the part where it all came crashing down.
Thanks for being with us this afternoon. We begin with breaking news on the news at 5. Federal investigators say a prominent Austin auto executive orchestrated a $1 million hit job.
Erik Charles Mond was a partner with a well-known auto dealer chain started by his grandfather. Tonight, he is in jail.
Erik was taken to jail without bond. Authorities considered him a flight risk. He was charged with murder for hire, with death resulting. Gil Peled, Adam Carey, and Brian Brockway faced the same charge, plus 2 other charges: conspiracy to commit kidnapping and kidnapping with death resulting. Each of these charges could result in a mandatory life sentence, no wiggle room for good behavior. So all of them pleaded not guilty, except for Gil Peled. He teamed up with the prosecution. Attorney Joe Turner, who once worked as a federal prosecutor, explained Gil's situation to us at the shithole.
Well, if somebody asks me about federal court, when my clients come in to discuss federal court, I start off with the mountain lion story. Have you heard the mountain lion story? And they say no. I said, well, let me explain to you how federal court works. You know, you've got several co-defendants in this case. And I said, the way it works is all your defendants are sitting around at a campfire, and all of a sudden a mountain lion shows up, and you all start running. And you've turned to one of the others and say, we can't outrun this mountain lion. And the guy turns to you and says, I just got to outrun you. And it's a funny story because it kind of shows you how brutal the federal system can be, though, is that the first person to cooperate generally gets the deal and gets the better deal, and so on and so forth. The last one who cooperates gets the worst deal. That is the starting point for negotiation for every federal criminal lawyer in any conspiracy case is, where do you fit in here? And can you be the guy? Because the other factor is does the government want to make a deal with you? Or does the government just want to eat you?
In this case, Gil was the first to make a deal.
And they made the deal with the wrong guy, in my opinion. Because Mond probably would have cooperated against him. But it was too late, because by the time they got to Mond, who had hired a lawyer, they had already had that taped conversation already completed. And 20 minutes later, he's calling a lawyer or whatever, and the lawyer's like, you did what? I'm sure that's what, that had to have happened. Because the lawyer, anybody who's been around the federal system knows, you got to outrun the other guy. Because the mountain lion is going to eat somebody. They are here, and they're hungry, and the federal government's going to get them.
The way Joe explained it, Gil pleading guilty didn't guarantee him any leniency in sentencing, but he had some hope that he'd get a better deal than the other guys. I asked him, is that it? Gil just won because they got to him first? Or could there be another reason they went after Erik instead?
Well, I'm wondering if to what extent the fact that his last name played a part in this too. I don't know.
How would you explain that?
He's a bigger target. He's a well-known person, right? There's jealousy among federal agents and people that came with that, people that have money, and they look at somebody like Mond and said, "Oh, you inherited all this money, you know. You're not as sympathetic to us."
Some in Erik's circle were surprised to hear about a double murder. They wondered if authorities had trumped up the charges. But as one person told us, if it was going to be anyone, it would be Erik. The guys at the shithole had their own theories.
So Paled's greed is what probably precipitated this whole thing. Paled's greed to try to con this poor drunk out of money, and then says I'm somebody that he really wasn't, and said that I could handle this whole thing for you, but it's going to cost you a little bit of money, and it'll cost you a lot of money. He knew he could take advantage of this young man, and he did.
They seemed to think that Erik was guilty of poor judgment, though they didn't think he was a threat to society.
People have that liquid courage. You know, you want us to get rid of him. Yeah, get rid of him, drunk. He would never kill anybody.
They thought Gil was more responsible than Erik.
Joe Turner, you said it a while ago. The main man that they're giving the deal to, he's the culprit. He thought he's the whole
He's
deal.
the most culpable.
He was the one that Erik might. He don't get.
They made the deal with the wrong
Erik
guy.
Erik couldn't tell you what day it was.
Can't they go? Can the appeal show that not that he deserves to lose a lot, but not to stay in jail the rest of his life.
That's the injustice of what happened here.
Yeah.
He had a very good lawyer, and the government chose to target Mond and not that guy. And they made the deal with the devil, who really was the one who instigated probably most of this anyway.
I asked what they thought was a fair punishment for Erik, but no one could really say. One of the guys said he only did it one time. Erik hired a team of high-power attorneys who gave him hope. His father, Doug, would pepper his conversations with the phrase, "when Erik gets home." The trial began on November 1st, 2023, at the federal courthouse in downtown Nashville. My producer, Anna, and I were there. Erik's lawyers filed a motion to keep the jurors from seeing the Google review, but the judge denied it. Despite all the evidence against him, bank statements that showed Erik wired Gil $150,000 the day of the murders, and the Google review, Erik still pleaded not guilty. In the months leading up to the trial, Erik Mond and Adam Carey filed motions to sever so they could be tried as individuals, not as members of a conspiracy. But the judge didn't go for it, and they were forced to face each other and the other defendants in person. Erik saw Adam and Brian for the first time in the confines of the courtroom, sitting only a few feet apart from them. The room was small, with Erik, Brian, Adam, and their lawyers packed in a tight row on one side of the courtroom, facing the jury. Since Gil pleaded guilty, he never joined them. He only came to testify for the government. Behind the bar, that's the short wall that divides the room, visitors sat in 6 rows of benches. The victim's family and friends were on one side, and the defendant's friends and family were on the other. Anna and I sat in the press row, in the back. We didn't have much company, just a newspaper reporter from the Tennessean and a producer from ABC's 2020. We were right behind Erik's parents and sisters. His wife and children did not attend. We weren't allowed to record the trial, but we took notes. We watched Gil take the stand in his orange jumpsuit, escorted by U.S. Marshals. We watched Meat and Red testify to the timeline as they remembered it, and their impressions of Brian and Adam. We watched a video deposition from the Vanderbilt radiologist whom Bill had threatened to expose. We heard all of the undercover calls. At one point, the hallway was abuzz with rumors that Charlie Sheen was going to appear to testify to Gil's character, but that never did happen. The trial lasted 11 days, with each defendant blaming the others. It was pretty interesting to see them all sit in a row as they turned on one another, watching their lawyers hurl accusations. Erik Mond's lawyers said it was all Gil Paled's fault. They argued that Gil was broke, with no contacts in Austin. So when Erik Mond reached out, Gil took advantage of him. They said that Gil took a small problem, turned it into a big problem, and put a price tag on it. Sure, Erik may have paid for surveillance, but he didn't know about the hit, and there's no proof he ordered it. The jury would have to take Gil's word for it, and Gil was a liar. They said that when Gil was caught, he tried to save himself and give the feds the rich guy they sought as a prize. The upshot? Erik was unfairly targeted because of his money and family name. Brian's defense also focused on discrediting Gil's testimony. They even brought out Gil's CV to prove that he had lied about his military record. He wasn't in the Israeli Secret Service. He was just a tank commander. Gil sheepishly admitted the tweaks to his resume made him look better. Brian's lawyer argued that Gil would lie on the stand, just like he lied on his resume. And since the murder weapon was never found, Brian's lawyer vaguely pointed the finger at Adam. He said, quote, "Obviously Holly Williams and Bill Landway were killed," note the passive voice, "but not by Brian." As for the recording of Brian telling Red that he'd killed Bill Landway, his lawyer said that was just chest beating. "Consider context," he said. "They're in a bar drinking. It was just an attempt to look cool in front of a friend." Adam's attorney spent the least amount of time in front of the jury. He too used the passive voice. While both Holly and Bill were killed, he said, they did not die at the hands of Adam Carey. The attorney argued that the bullets came from one gun. And since Brian admits to shooting Bill on the recording, wasn't it possible that Brian killed them both? The big takeaway? Erik said it was all Gil. Brian said it was all Gil and Adam. Adam said it was all Brian. The government said it was all of them. And the undercover recordings were key to their argument. Especially the call Erik took from Gil on the side of I-35. Federal prosecutor Rob McGuire, whom you've heard throughout the show, stood at a podium and explained the way he saw it.
What we argued was that in the controlled phone call that he had with Gilad Paled, when he's confronted with a request for money, it is more about control than it is about the money. You know, he's not saying, "I'm afraid" or "I'm terrified." He's saying, "I want to be in control of this situation." I don't think it was just his wife that he wanted to keep this secret from. I think he wanted to keep this secret a secret from everyone in his life. His children, his colleagues, people he would encounter in the community. He wanted to keep his secrets a secret.
On some days at the trial, Erik appeared relaxed, smiling and even laughing. So much so that one of his attorneys felt the need to explain his behavior to the jury. He and Erik were old friends, he said. But when the jury foreman read the verdict, Erik sat still, as if he were trying to remember how to breathe.
Hello.
Hello?
Guilty or not guilty?
As we walked down the courthouse steps for the last time, we knew there was somebody who would want to hear the news first. Wallace Lundgren. Wallace, the former Chevrolet dealer, had been our window into the world of Austin car dealerships when we started this project.
Guilty? Oh my goodness. The whole thing?
The whole thing. Erik was found guilty of murder for hire, with death resulting. Adam and Brian each received 2 additional convictions related to kidnapping, since Holly was still alive when they moved her to the construction site. Sentencing for Erik, Adam, and Brian won't be held until later this year, though they're all appealing. The judge may grant Gil some leniency because of his cooperation, but as it stands, each count carries a mandatory life sentence. For now, Erik's in jail. After the trial, Wallace invited us for lunch at an old-school, top-floor members-only club in downtown Austin called the Headliners Club. Over fajitas and iced tea, he told us that the country club types went quiet after news about the trial spread.
Dead quiet. I mean, dead quiet.
After the verdict?
Yes. And the day before, you could get guys to argue with you that he was going to walk, and he didn't do it, and we haven't heard a peep from him.
We told him more about what we saw at the trial, and then Wallace gave us a surprising take. It wasn't about the trial at all. He thought we didn't have a story.
I just don't know if it has enough kinks in it to be saleable. It's pretty straightforward. I mean, sex is a component, but not any kind of lurid sex, just normal everyday. But there's not all that much to know.
Wallace wondered, what's so unique about a car dealer who hired some hitmen? Car dealers aren't all angels. Another Austin car dealership businessman, Dorsey Brian Hardiman, is facing 4 charges of arson for setting multiple fires throughout the city this past winter. In 2021, a car dealer in Lubbock named Bart Rieger was convicted of running a multi-million-dollar fraud scheme. He was sentenced to 14 years in federal prison and ordered to pay $9 million in restitution. Wallace just didn't think Erik's wrongdoing was that unique.
It's not like he was a head of the community and like a preacher or something where it had the makings of a real, a car dealer who screws around is pretty common. I mean, it's not a big deal.
And are Adam Carey and Brian Brockway even hitmen? They're certainly not like other career hitmen he and Salem had heard about over the years.
I wouldn't say these guys were hitmen. I say they were just, gave them a little money and to kill somebody, that didn't mean nothing to them. It's kind of like life doesn't mean nothing to them.
Especially Holly's life.
People of this woman's stature generally don't have an advocate, because they're just that layer of society that society doesn't want to think about too much.
I miss her. I wish I could tell her that I love her.
This is Holly's friend, Marie Carroll. We spoke with her the day before the trial started.
I don't know, what can you say? You want to kind of be angry at her choices and the situation, but then you're just angry because you lost her. I just hate it. I really hate it.
At the end of our interview, as we were packing up and Marie was getting ready to leave, she told us she was frustrated that some of the guys she knew from Holly's circle weren't willing to talk to us about Holly.
I'm so angry at other people just not standing up for her. And it's, it's guys mainly, because that's who we all had in common, or we had in common. It's just guys because of who I was, the way I acted, and searching for men's attention. And, it's like they knew Holly too for probably the same reasons. And I even asked a couple of them, are you going to talk? Are you going to say anything? They're like, no, why would I? Just like she was a piece of trash too. And I'm like, I need to get out of here. Because if I'm murdered, they would not care.
Marie said she'd even seen people online victim blame Holly, as if to say she had this coming.
Just bringing up her past. Well, this is how she was. This is the choices that she made, and she shouldn't have done this. She shouldn't have done that. And I agree, but again, the choices make us who we are. And no matter what, he had no right to do what he did.
She's talking about Erik Mond, but really, she could be talking about any of the men in this story. Gil Peled, Adam Carey, Brian Brockway, Bill Lanway. Holly's friend Matt Garrett, who had the dream that Bill was going to kill Holly, has thought a lot about Holly and Bill's relationship.
Holly loved him in some way, so I'm sure he did have a really good side to him. But also you think of the tumultuous relationship that must have occurred between his mom and his dad. These toxic things were imprinted on him too, and his violent tendencies.
Matt understood how old patterns affected new relationships. They could lead a person to choose partners who just weren't good for them.
Oh, I think most of mine have been that way. It's always been that way. So yeah, it's hard to break that stuff. you know, because you got to be lonely, you know, for a long time. But I don't know, maybe that's one of our tests too in this journey.
Here's something to consider. Bill's court date for his attack against Holly was scheduled to take place on March 16th, just 4 days after he and Holly were killed. There's no way to know whether or not Bill was definitely going to jail that March. Holly mentioned in texts that she might drop her charges against him. But still, there is a world in which Erik waited a week to respond to Bill's threats. Bill got locked up, and Holly remains safe from both of them. I wonder if Erik has thought about this, and if he feels any remorse, especially about Holly, knowing now that she wasn't involved in Bill's blackmail scheme.
Oh, I think he feels remorse that he got caught. I think if he really felt remorse, he would have turned himself in. All criminals feel remorse, but I don't think many of them feel remorse if they don't get caught.
Austinites had a field day on Reddit when the news spread about the Charles Maughan Toyota guy. In one thread, commenters workshop jokes. Is Truck Month canceled then? A local filmmaker even made a fake car commercial called Certified Used Hitman.
Everybody's playing Erik Maughan's taped deal on the FBI. Yesterday, every place I went, somebody handed me a phone and said, "Hey, listen to this. This is Erik talking to the FBI." Have y'all heard it?
So much for avoiding family pain and embarrassment. The Coverts of Covert Ford and the Hennas of Henna Chevrolet probably knew about the verdict within hours. The shithole? They probably knew within seconds.
He's going to be probably in a maximum security. If it's life without parole, he's going to be in a maximum security. Shithole.
Shithole.
That's right. He's not like your security here.
In the aftermath of the arrests, the Maughans sold their car business to a Fortune 300 company called Group 1 Automotive for an undisclosed amount. It's possible the family was compelled to sell.
Because they lost the Toyota dealership over this deal. You know, there's a contract in all of our agreements with Chevrolet, kind of a moral turpitude clause. They stick to it. If you get in some kind of a jam like this, you're done.
What was once the mighty Charles Maughan Toyota is now simply Toyota of North Austin.
The all-new Toyota of North Austin is open now.
We are Austin.
Erik Maughan was no longer heir to anything but a stockpile of money, some $40 million, that he'll never see again. You have to wonder what the street-smart, hungry forefathers who built the car empires would have thought of all this. At the shithole, Erik's downfall epitomized a younger generation's foolishness.
But Charlie, he came up the hard way. He knew about all that stuff. Charlie would have done exactly what Joe Turner said. He just said, go get you a divorce lawyer and pay her and go home. Simple.
But you don't need to have come up the hard way to understand that Erik had better options. For all his motivation to protect his wife and kids from scandal, they were thrust into a much worse, more public one. One of the most astonishing parts of this whole story, just 2 months after the murders, well before his arrest, Erik filed for divorce anyway. He and Sherry are now separated. The empire Erik meant to inherit has vanished, but there are still remnants around town. If you drive around Central Texas today, you're bound to see a truck with a Charles Maughan Toyota license plate holder, marked by the company's logo, the shape of Texas, colored like the state flag. Someday, years from now, a driver might see one of those and wonder, whatever happened to Charles Maughan Toyota? A silence will follow, and that will be Erik Maughan's piece of the legacy.
Rolling fast down I-35, supersonic overdrive. Rolling fast down I-35, through the day and
The Problem with Erik is an original podcast created by Texas Monthly and Anna Worrell. Our executive producer is Megan Kreit. The show is reported and written by me, Katie Vine, and written, produced, and reported by Anna Worrell. It was produced and engineered by Brian Standifer, who also wrote the music. Story editing and production by Patrick Michaels. Additional production is by Aisling Ayers. Additional editing by Karen Olson. Jacqueline Coletti is our fact checker. Studio musicians were John Sanchez, Glenn Fukunaga, and Pat Mansky. Artwork is by Emily Kimbrough and Victoria Milner. Our theme is Entrance Song by the Black Angels. News coverage of Erik Maughan's arrest is from KVUE. Thank you for listening.